energy, as we know it, Western medicine, you've probably had either an EKG or an EEG sometime in your life. So they're actually measuring the waves and the pulses of who you are. But believe it or not, it's not just the heart that has a pulse, but every organ has its pulse. And I assume if their technology was sharp enough, they would notice that every cell has a pulse. So your energy at the most physical level is electric energy in the body. In fact, the electrical signals in the body are determining your biochemical makeup. So when Western psychology wants to say you're a victim of your genes and you're a victim of your biochemical makeup, it turns out that may not be as true as they're thinking it is. Because it's the energy signals that determines what chemicals are going to be dropped into the bloodstream, okay? And when you change your mind, when you change your energy, you actually change the chemicals, and by the way, the genetic expression of what happens. So there you are, a certain energy. When energy peaks and valleys line up, that is actually called resonance. So when you're tapped into the space of who you are, the energy of who you are, and you're still with that, and you have an idea, a concept, you're looking at a book, a chair, a fabric that you want to decorate your couch with, when you tap in, you will feel the response. You will know if it resonates or not, because each of you are a unique energetic vibration. We know that by science right now. Kind of a kaleidoscope of energies. Everyone's unique. And if something resonates with you, it will actually amplify the field. It comes together, it shares information, and it becomes like one field. This is how we go into collective consciousness, by the way. I'll revisit that later, but that's the start of a collective consciousness. Okay, when things are resonating with who we are. When they do, we will experience it as a positive emotion. When it doesn't, to some degree, we will experience it as a not so great emotion. It won't feel too good to us. People who are sensitive to the energy fields will feel this. I have some clients that even will feel a difference in the base of a lamp to the top of the lamp. People who are sensitive to energy fields will feel the radiation that's coming off of all things. So you're not crazy and you're not too sensitive. It just means you have really great radar that most people don't understand. But it's real. Okay. But that doesn't explain when we have higher consciousness experiences. So Western society, Western medicine, Western science says they're impossible. If you've had an out-of-body experience, if you've had a near-death experience, if you've had an aha moment, you're awakening, if you see ghosts, like people will say that's impossible. I love the scientists who say, you know what, that data of past life experiences, all these things, the data is so robust, can we quit talking about how it's impossible? And can we start understanding the physics behind what's happening? So for those of you who might want a great read, it's a real thick book, kind I take to the beach, I'm a sucker, but I take these thick Life Force, the scientific basis, Claude Swanson, he's an MIT physicist, and that's what I take to the beach for me now. I'm just that way. But it's awesome, but I've tried to synthesize it for you exactly. All right, but here's what happens. As we expand our consciousness, we actually expand, it's impossible to draw, but this would also be a good way for you to understand it. It's an expansion, and it's literally an awakening into higher and higher and more expanded fields. See how literal this is? It's literal. So when you say, I feel expanded inside, it's literal, okay? So from this point here, which is the lowest point on the page, Most people, by the way, are right here. That's it. Most of the people you're going to talk to have never really experienced that much outside of here. So in the physical reality of things, you're experiencing, okay, I don't want to go too far down the quantum rabbit hole, but I'll just say theory of relativity, you know, like riding on light beams. The reason we see ourselves as physical is because this is the vibration that we are riding, if you will, at this time. So it appears like it's standing still. All right, so, but at this material level of reality, we experience the things and we ignore the space. We're looking at the things. We're pretty much ignoring all the space. So doesn't it make sense that when I'm in my physical layer of consciousness, I'm going to be attending to my physical body and its needs, right? Safety, security, self-preservation. That's also the consciousness of your cells, your autopilot, your neuroplastic normal. Anybody know what neuroplastic is? I know a couple of you do, but yeah? I'll tell you later why that's important. All right, so your physical layer, your physical consciousness. So it's going to drive you from there. Wherever you are, that's what drives you. That's why motivations and values change, by the way, depending on what state you're in. So here, you are driven and motivated by that energy carrying that information, which says, go eat, go get some exercise, go drink some water, right? When we start experiencing emotional layers, they are more subtle, right? And look at how many in our society, they don't even want to tap into emotions. No, emotions, forget that, dangerous, don't want to do it. But if you block this, you block the rest of this, by the way. So you have to get to the point along your journey that you are willing to just look. Just notice the emotions that are there because they are biofeedback from the universe saying, pay attention to what's resonating with you and what isn't. So it's really important. Pay attention to which people you are resonating with and which ones you aren't. Because we are meant to cluster together, like same thing with cells and organs, right? Some of us are going to be the liver cells and some are going to be heart cells and brain cells. We are meant to find our group. Okay? That's really where we notice we go from I consciousness to I, you. We notice our relationship to all things, even if they're ideas and concepts. When we get to this layer, we need to, there's a saying, you need to develop the ego before you're ready to transcend the ego. And here is why that's true, and very important, all right? Don't diss the ego. You are meant to know what physical skills and abilities you have. You're meant to know what you resonate with and what naturally you find interesting. You are meant to know the ideas that resonate with you and come to you. You are meant, this would be the seed of personal power, I won't write it, but it's on the page. You are meant to develop your personal power because until you do, the soul doesn't have much to work with. When you find your personal power and know what you are skilled to do as a soul, now you are integrated. Now you are integrated. You are now a vessel. And this starts opening up. So when you go to the heart and you open up to the heart energies, this starts we consciousness. You are coming into the fields that are now not quite so narrow and close. They're more expanded. And you are entering collective realms. So, I don't know how many of you, for instance, have, let's say, a spouse or a loved one that you're really, really close to. And you actually end up, I just knew you were going to call, or you pick up the phone at the same time, or some other kind of synchronicity like that. It's because you guys now are tapped in to a collective, joint, interconnected field. And you both are sharing information And it will feel like telepathy, if you will, even though we're not usually conscious of it that way. So here, because you're open, you now feel a sense of inclusivity. You now feel a, hey, I love that Android commercial, you know, different and together. Like, we can feel our differentness, but we can also intuit, and this is the seed of the intuition right here. We will intuit now information about our part in the whole. And we will start noticing synchronicities in our life. They start happening. Now, here's the cool thing in physics too. This realm is about torsion fields. And technically in here, we probably don't need to get into what a torsion field is. We probably really don't care. Although there is a really cool hint that I will leave you. And it's related to the spin motion within things. Just like galaxies, universes, and everything has a central spin, including the planet. That's not a coincidence. And I love that quantum physicists are now saying, you know what, there's this other kind of field. And it's different from electromagnetism, which is down here. Okay, so when you're in gears 1 through 3, you won't experience the magic. And that's okay, right? We gotta do the dishes. That's fine. You don't have to be in the magic to do the dishes. Okay, so when you're in gears 1 through 3, notice that you're more in tune with and paying attention to electromagnetic fields. And this all is within time and space, as you're going to see on your handout. It's within time and space. It obeys those rules. It takes time and space to travel. So you're not going to be telepathic when you're in that gear. Okay? You're in too slow of a vibration. We'll use that language. But up here, when you've opened the heart, and so I'm going to address that heart-brain thing. When you open the heart, you now open in and you start entering other spheres that are wider and broader and more expanded and have the magic. Because they are everywhere at once. Scientists call them non-local because they're not localized. They just seem to be everywhere at once, like one beautiful symphony. And it's as if everyone is moving collectively, even when they don't know why, if they're open to their intuition, because they're in step with that invisible conductor that in especially moments of bliss, we are out of body in a way, we're tapped into something much larger than who we are, and we're moving, because that is now moving us, right? Not just to go get water, and not just to go get a sandwich, and not just to go crash into the car that just cut us off. Like, we're moved to do something bigger, and it's very real, and it's very natural to who you are. That's the irony here. We're so busy doing all these things that we can't hear this other stuff, but it's here. But we have to be still to listen. So when you tap into here, something different happens. You start feeling responsible for your whole. You'll say things like, I don't know why, I just feel like there's a larger purpose that I have. Not quite sure what it is yet, but I feel something. You'll start feeling a sense of responsibility. And when you do, by the way, you need to have compassion for your ego that's going to get all pissed off because not everybody else is feeling equally responsible. And you're going to say things like, why do I always have to do it all? I have a lot of people complain about that to me. Why do I always have to be the one to love? Why do I always have to be the one to forgive? Why do I always have to be the biggest person? Some recognition, right? It gets exhausting, by the way, right? Absolutely. But here, you're tapped in, and that's the information that comes to you. It wants you to be responsible for your part in the whole, because that's why you're here. That's why you're born. Every single person is here because you are literally the particle that has taken this beautiful energy and localized here for a very specific purpose. We'll get back to that. So there your intuition is awakened. You're receiving, I call them downloads. You just get spiritual downloads. And you have to be out of your analytical mind, by the way. If you're stuck within your analytical mind, you will not feel it. Because you literally, energy gets transduced down. I'll just draw it that way. Like a power plant to a power station to a transformer to a plug, right, or plug. Notice that energy is transduced down from one form to another. And the same thing here. When you tap into higher states, I could go on to so many tangents that I'm trying to hold back. Judy knows that's for sure. Okay. When you're tapped into these higher states, when you're tapping into them naturally, believe it or not, the particles that we'll call it your soul self, the energy core self of energy that you really are, is constantly magnetizing to itself the atoms of your body. That's why even Western science knows that in 7 years you don't even have a single cell that's the same. Like even Western knows that, they don't know why. But if you realize that that core energy field that's a unique vibrational blueprint, makes you unique in all the cosmos, that's what we're going to call the soul self. It's magnetizing even all of the particles of your body. And so it's also why mind-body medicine works, by the way, and certain body-centered approaches work really well, and that's a tangent. But when these energies are transduced down, and when you're in these states doing a natural growth, what happens is your body literally changes. So now we can take that that's in spiritual literature and it's in esoteric literature, but now we can imagine how literal it is. You literally are changing the light out of which you are made, and as your light within is shining brighter, it's attracting different molecules of your body, and that's why you can handle these downloads better than other people. Has anybody ever met anyone that tried to do a Kundalini rising, or actually felt like they broke something after too much drug transcending going on? Anybody know anybody like that? I get a lot of people in my office. Unfortunately, that happens. I see the nod, yeah? It happens. It's like something breaks. You are not, just like as if we were going to plug hair dryers into the power plant. That wouldn't be too pretty. We're not meant to tap into some layers in our physical form. So sometimes we will experience it in dream states and out-of-body states, but we won't always experience things in the physical state because the physical body can only handle so much energy, if you will. So there you are, expanding into your soul consciousness. There you are, becoming more responsible, yearning to know your part in the whole, feeling just this love that wants to spread, feeling like you're longing to meet other people who are loving and inclusive and not prejudiced, and they just want us all to get along. This is that seat. It's the seat of compassion. It's the seat of forgiveness. Why do I point out some of those basics? Because when you look around to other people and you're like, why can't they forgive one another? Why can't they be compassionate? Why can't they feel responsible? They're not there yet. They're so in the I consciousness, and that's all they experience, and they are so afraid. They are very afraid. But our job isn't to help everybody do their journey. Our journey is to hold steady the light. That's an esoteric phrase that I love, and I probably repeat it way too often in the book. But we all need to practice holding steady the light that we are, and we need to realize that this is a literal light. Literal light. And it's a hologram of light that goes from a kaleidoscope of more lower, slower vibrational realms. That's not a judgment statement. It's just lower frequency, which is why we have a material reality. Okay? But it's also tapped into the much higher other frequencies and colors, if you will, beyond our conception. And we need to hold steady the light that we are. And imagine if every one of us did that. Imagine if every one of us didn't back down Didn't say I can't talk to anybody, nobody understands me. Believe me, I did my share, I totally get it. But the more we start, you know, that's okay, we can walk through the fear, we don't have to be fearless. But we just go do it anyway, and we get better at whatever that is with practice. And the more we hold steady our light, the more we can find one another, right? Now, it's like, oh, I see you, I see you, I see you. We're on the same wavelength, that's true. We're resonating with one another, that's true. Notice that, because you will attract those people to you, magnetize truly to you in a weird synchronous way, and I won't bore you with all my synchronicity stories, but you really will attract the very people that you need for whatever that is. So this realm, remember, if you're looking around and other people don't have some of what you consider basic qualities, it's because they're just not tapped into those fields yet. Once you go here, the rest of it seems to fall into place. So here you are, let's say, walking as a soul, trying to hold steady your light. As you do, you're going to notice that you just yearn for this higher creativity. And what does that have in common? For the good of all. Now, that doesn't have to be the entire planet, but each of you are going to have a for the good of all. Does that mean for the good of all my family, for the good of all my community, for the good of all my church, for the good of all my neighborhood? Your soul will be moved to go ahead and do something for the good of all. And to do that, you immediately will receive downloads that are the ideas and higher visions of how to do that. So you'll just get pictures that come to your mind. Anybody ever get those kind of pictures? Yeah. They just come into your mind, yeah.
I teach kindergarten, so yeah, all the time.
What's that?
I teach kindergartners,
Yes.
so it happens all the time.
Well, there you are, being the love that you are to a bunch of kindergartners.
I'm always having
really
visions.
hard. And it's a lot of things that creative ideas are gonna come to you.
Yeah.
So we can each start from where we are, because if we're being the love that we are in our own circle, in our own neighborhood, in our own career field that we're already in, we will start feeling these creative downloads, we will get these visions, and they're beautiful. They feel very blissful, because look what's happening. You are actually in tune and in touch with the energies that you really are, the wave part of you, you're really in touch with, and they are flowing directly through this physical body using the left brain for what it's intended. It's not intended for direction, it's intended to help you carry out a task. And you're in relationship with the people that you're meant to do something with. And you have a physical body, you need the physical body to kind of go make those steps forward. But it feels like flow. So hopefully you're getting a sense that alignment and balance is a literal thing. You're literally making all of these line up for this beautiful purpose that you have at any given moment. And the mind is helping you do it. The lower heart is helping you do it. And your body is helping you do it. When that happens for you, it's going to feel amazing. It's going to feel very blissful. But yeah, we got to go do the dishes. So you're not going to maybe walk in the feeling of bliss constantly, because if I need to switch gears, and let's say somebody the other day was talking about filling out college application forms and a new career they were inspired for. When you're filling out the forms, you're in your left brain, and it's not going to quite feel so blissful. That's okay. It doesn't mean it disappears. It just means that's the year that you're in at any given time. So the heart, what we now know, is that the heart actually, by HeartMath, great institution, those scientists are letting us know that the heart is the biggest antenna receiver for the magnetic fields and beyond that are way higher frequency than just the electric stuff. Okay, so the heart will pick it up first, absolutely. And the more you're open and connected, it will be instantaneous that it will pick it up. Instantaneous, it will pick it up. And it seems that what we know scientifically is it delegates it to the brain, so it'll transduce that down to the brain, and then the brain will translate it into even more electrical signals for the body to respond to and do its chemical, physical thing that it does, if that makes sense. Maybe I should stop you. What?
I have a question.
Tell me.
So if I am been in my first, second, third year,
Okay,
and I'm kind of tired of being there,
okay,
and I'm ready to gear up to the
okay,
fourth year and beyond, how do I get there?
okay. So this is why I'd say about every spiritual practice has in common is learning to cultivate stillness within. Now, I'm going to say that the way most people teach it, it might be the hardest meditation on the planet, because in my understanding, most people will say, go sit on a pillow and still your mind. And I've heard people that have done that for 30 years, and they're like, it's not working. And I'm going to say this right now, all of you together, with me. Right now, I invite you to point your ears outside, your inner awareness pointed outside, and just for a moment, try to tell me if you hear any birds outside. Okay. Doesn't matter if we did, doesn't matter if we didn't. What was your mind doing when you were listening for the birds?
It was still.
So listening is the shortest meditation on the planet. And when we're truly listening, guess what we're doing? On the bottom here, I have a saying, as you focus, so you are there in consciousness. So when I tune in there, by the way, I can really tune in and start literally tuning in birds or a tree or what have you, and we can have the experience up. But when you're truly listening, you just completely quieted the mind because it was pointing somewhere to receive information. The mind is usually busy doing, talking, because actually it's waiting for something to do. It's like an obedient puppy, and it really wants to do a good job, and so it really wants you to give it something exciting to do. But when we start feeling different about this, we're actually pointing within to the space, to the silence that's already there. And if need be, we wait. And if need be, we wait. And if need be, we wait. Now, I'm a little impatient. So literally what I do is throughout the day, I guess I just love gabbing with the universe all day long. So throughout the day, I point up, listen, just like we did with the birds, and I notice if anything's coming in. If it is, it is. If it's not, it's not. I'm not going to sit there for 20 minutes just waiting for something to hit me, because it'll hit me when it wants to hit me. So I just tune in and notice, okay? And it will come in as intuition. And the more we do that, actually, the more we actually start living a very intuitive life, because it's almost like, I guess the way I would describe it, I've described it to some of my clients, is it's almost like you're trained for like 2 years. Like, let's say this year, the right side is waiting for information to come in from these beautiful abstract levels. And then it wants you to kind of have a talk with your brain and say, well, now what do I want to do with that information? Okay? So it's like, oh my God, look at that unbelievable vision I just had. How cool is that? Maybe it inspires somebody for a new program for the kindergarten class or something. And all of a sudden you're like, oh wow, yeah, how can I do that? And maybe you start making forms or what have you. But literally it's about listening and tuning in, just bringing it in. Now notice what keeps us from doing that. Science has largely told us that doesn't exist. Spirituality doesn't exist, God doesn't exist, anything higher doesn't exist. The only thing that exists is what you're seeing with your own eyes. And yet I find it interesting that same science, who hasn't picked up forcibly, usually in school, you were forced to pick up some science book that had you look at the electromagnetic spectrum. And what to me is the elephant in the room is that the visible light spectrum was a sliver. A sliver! You ever notice that? It was this teeny weeny tiny little thing. And then you got this big old spectrum. So I'm like, hello? Isn't it obvious that the invisible is way more present than the visible? Like, what do you guys, like, why do you keep relying so much on the visible? And even science nowadays is going, okay, we can see. I guess at least, depending on who you ask, I guess at least 95, 96% of all things is invisible to us. Now that would seem to me rather profound. But I guess they rather keep focusing on the visible, and that's okay. But those of you that are here are probably feeling a calling to tap into something deeper, something expanded, for a very specific reason. And it's so easy for us to dismiss it and to kick it away and say, well, who am I? And I'm inadequate and I'm not good enough. Believe me, that's what we're all doing. And we just have to say, what do I need to go do it anyway? And do baby steps. What, for the tiniest little baby step, what do I need to do just for that? Did that kind of answer that question? Yeah.